All right, so Sean Hannity, the melted-brained conservative boomer propagandist on Fox News, has been absolutely pissing and shitting his pants at basically everything that Bernie Sanders has had to say over the last couple of years. So I wanted to give you a couple examples from his radio show that he has in addition to the Fox News show that he hosts on a daily basis, because these are really just perfect examples in terms of how easy it should be to defeat people like him and the party that he represents in the Republican Party and the type of ideology that they are trying to push. Because if you actually back them into a corner and try to talk about policy, they basically just start making our arguments for us. So here's the first example that popped up in my Twitter feed when I initially was just scrolling around and I saw from the Sean Hannity radio show site that they had posted this headline. So it says, "Comrade Sanders, keeping teeth in your mouth should not be a luxury for senior citizens." Let me just say that one more time and try to imagine this as some sort of a radical statement, okay? Comrade Sanders, keeping your teeth in your mouth should not be a luxury for senior citizens. So literally just saying old people should be able to have teeth in the wealthiest society that has ever existed on the face of the planet. Okay, that is the benign statement that Bernie Sanders is putting forward here. And so Sean Hannity is trying to portray this statement as if it's some radical commie proposal that he's putting forward here, something that basically every other OECD nation around the world guarantees. I don't know, what type of nuances these people are trying to put into our healthcare system, but in my opinion, in my humble opinion, and granted, I'm not a doctor, but I do think that your teeth are a part of your body and therefore should probably be included in things like Medicare coverage, okay? And that's actually literally what Bernie Sanders was referring to in this statement that he was making. But it's not just in the headline that Sean Hannity is getting absolutely riled up about this. It's also in the body of the paragraph itself. So here's what they had to say about this. Radical Senator Bernie Sanders confused millions of users on social media Wednesday when he declared it a luxury for senior citizens in the United States to keep their teeth in their mouth. And again, he said, in the richest country in the history of the world, keeping teeth in your mouth as you grow old should not be a luxury. We must expand Medicare now. So again, just saying that in the wealthiest nation in the history of planet Earth, old people should be able to have teeth, okay? And he refers to him as Radical Senator Bernie Sanders for making a statement like this. And they continue, the socialist senator, Bernie Sanders is not a socialist, he's a democratic socialist or a social democrat, if you want to call him that, but he is not a socialist. But the socialist senator made similar comments weeks ago when he claimed 90 million Americans are uninsured and are underinsured. And he said, it is totally unacceptable that we are the only major country on earth not to guarantee healthcare to every man, woman, and child as a human right. And the result of that is we've got 90 million people today who are uninsured or underinsured. So again, he's saying that this is somehow like a confusing statement. Why is this confusing, that 90 million Americans are underinsured? I actually couldn't find a specific article that was talking about the $90 million number, but just to give you a reference point here, just directly from census.gov, okay, in 2020, 8.6% of people, or 28 million in the United States, did not have health insurance at any point during the year. So I really don't think it's a stretch to suggest that maybe double this amount would be underinsured. And it's kind of hard to calculate like how many people are actually underinsured because it's kind of subjective. You have to ask people questions like, did you avoid getting prescription drugs? Did you avoid going to see the doctor because you were worried about costs, right? Things like that. It's kind of a hard exact number to specify. But if 28 million people in this country straight up did not have any healthcare during the entire year, then it's definitely not a stretch to suggest that 60 million people or so would be underinsured under our current system. So if anything, that's probably an underestimate based on what Bernie Sanders' definitions were in that statement there. So again, trying to portray this as some sort of a radical thing. This is what I'm talking about when I say they make our arguments for us. Everything that Bernie Sanders just said there is something that the overwhelming majority of the American people 100% support. The American people overwhelmingly support his Medicare for All plan that he has put forward. They overwhelmingly support the expansion of Medicare to cover Medicare and Medicaid, to cover dental, hearing, and vision, which is exactly what he is trying to get included in the Build Back Better Act right now, which it looks like it's most likely not going to be included. But these are not radical things by any stretch of the imagination. And on top of that, they're overwhelmingly popular. So if you can get motherfuckers like Sean Hannity to go out there every night and say old people don't deserve to have teeth in their mouths as a guaranteed right, then they're making our arguments for us, okay? So that's an easy political dub there that it seems like Democrats are not going to take by including this in the Build Back Better Act. But he's just another example of how they make our arguments for us by portraying totally benign statements as if they are somehow radical. So here's another one. Comrade Sanders, Bernie says USA must dismantle vaccine inequality around the world. So what is he talking about here? Well, Senator Bernie Sanders called on the World Trade Organization and others to dismantle vaccine inequality around the world Tuesday, claiming that lack of injections will make COVID variants more likely in the months ahead. So again, this is not just a claim that Bernie Sanders just made up off the top of his head, okay? This is something that every respectable doctor and institution around the world is saying as well. And it's really not that difficult to follow the line of logic. If you are unvaccinated, you are more likely to get COVID. And so if you have millions and millions, if not billions of people around the world who remain unvaccinated, they are more likely to get COVID and therefore more likely to develop new variants that will then mutate and spread about the population, okay? This is not difficult, okay? It's not hard to follow this string of logic, and it's not a claim, it's just a verifiable scientific fact. If we vaccinate the entire planet, we will all be safer. That is 100% a fact, and even from the perspective, this is why it doesn't make sense at any level, because even from the perspective of a hyper-capitalist ghoul like Sean Hannity, you should want the whole planet to get vaccinated. The only people who benefit from not having the entire global population vaccinated is these massive pharmaceutical executives who are making billions and billions of dollars by restricting access to the vaccines to inflate their profit margins. And Sean Hannity is the type of guy who will pretend sometimes to go out there and rail against, like, you know, the medical establishment and shit like this. You are bending over for the medical establishment by making claims like this as if they are, you know, somehow untrue in any way, shape, or form. But again, he says, the time for the debate by members of the World Trade Organization is over. We must urgently move now to dismantle the vaccine inequality that undermines our ability to confront this crisis and make vaccine technologies available to all, regardless of wealth. So what he's talking about there is just having the World Trade Organization release the vaccine patents so that every other country around the world can ramp up production and we can get more people vaccinated. So again, not something that's radical at all unless you are somebody who is just towing the line for big pharma in this country, okay? And that's exactly what Sean Hannity does on a regular basis. He then goes on to point out very benign and just, you know, random statements from Biden and doesn't actually provide literally any argument whatsoever against what Bernie Sanders is saying. He's just saying he's a radical by saying something like this, I guess. So again, no real argument being made. But here's another one, okay? Fantasyland. Fantasyland is the headline on this. Bernie says no one living in the USA should have any medical debt in their entire lives. Imagine making a pro-medical debt argument, okay? Imagine openly being pro-medical debt. You would have to be a literal demon to support something like this. Fantasyland, that Americans shouldn't be overwhelmingly burdened by medical debt. Okay, this is why healthcare should be considered a human right. Obviously, it's not in the United States. We have both the single most expensive healthcare system in the world, and we get lesser health results than basically every other OECD nation, depending on which metrics you're looking at. But the entire point, the entire reason for why that is happening is because of the profit motive. It is because we ration healthcare in this country based on the size of your wallet and not based on what your medical needs are, okay? That is the main problem with our system. The reason why 500,000 Americans go bankrupt every single year due to medical debt, the reason why 40 to 60,000 Americans die every year because they are uninsured or underinsured, as he was pointing out earlier, the entire reason that's happening is to, again, inflate the profit margins of a handful of wealthy executives and CEOs and shareholders who control our for-profit privatized health insurance industry, okay? That's the entire reason why this phrase medical debt even exists in the first place. And again, Sean Hannity is calling it a fantasy land to imagine any other better world. Apparently, there is no reasonable circumstance in which Americans will not have to be bankrupted and absolutely obliterated by student debt or medical debt. And they pointed out here the student debt side of it. The far left senator has also called on Joe Biden repeatedly to issue an executive order that would cancel up to $50,000 in educational loans. So again, what kind of society, what kind of an absolute demonic ghoul goes out there and openly argues for student debt, for medical debt? Again, these people are making our arguments for us. This is the entire reason why we on the left are constantly saying, for Democrats at least, or for anybody who's trying to run for political office, just focus on the fucking issues. Just focus on the actual substance, okay? If you go out there and tell people you're going to cancel student debt or medical debt, and you're going to eliminate the system that is causing those debts to be occurred in the first place, okay, people are going to support you. These are overwhelmingly popular issues again, okay? So they're making our arguments for us when they come out literally in favor of medical debt and shit like that. It's just absolutely laughably ridiculous at face value. But here's a final example, okay? And this one really takes the cake over all of them, because this is just something that, like, any basic person with any dignity or humanity at all would agree to. But Comrade Bernie, again using that moniker comrade for some reason, but Comrade Bernie says, our job is to recognize our common humanity and ensure all people live in dignity. How the fuck could you possibly disagree with this statement? Our job is to recognize our common humanity and ensure people live in dignity. What? You want people to not live in dignity? You want people to be like kicked to the curb and treated like shit and spat on by the system? Is that what you just openly want? Is that what you're in favor of? And the answer to that is yes. They literally are in favor of creating a society that does not treat people with dignity and respect or like with humanity, okay? That is the entire system that the Republican Party, that propagandists like Sean Hannity and the rest of Fox News ghouls, that they are trying to construct, okay? So there's no way that you can possibly be a thinking, feeling human being and disagree with this totally benign statement. But here is Sean Hannity disagreeing with it. So they say, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders listed his job responsibilities on social media Thursday, including the recognition of our common humanity and ensuring that all people live in dignity and security. He said, in my view, life is not about making billions of dollars and not paying attention to the suffering of others. That is a bogus vision. Our job is to recognize our common humanity and ensure that all people live in dignity and security. He posted on social media. So again, listen, if life is about, what do you disagree with that? Life is about making billions of dollars and not giving a shit about fellow humans. Okay, Sean Hannity is the type of guy who goes out there and pretends to be like a good little Christian boy, right? Go listen to Jesus Christ, man. Okay, listen, I'm not religious myself on a personal level, but if you believe in the message of Jesus Christ, that's kind of like his whole thing, right? This is why he went and he flipped the table at the church, right? He flipped over the merchant's table at the church, right? Is because he didn't really like what the modern day version of capitalists are, okay? He famously said in the Bible, and I don't know if it was actually Jesus who said this, but it famously says in the Bible that it is more difficult for a wealthy man to get into heaven than it is for a camel to fit through the eye of a needle. There's a reason for that, okay? One of the main functions of Jesus's message in the Bible was railing against rich people and caring for all human beings, okay? Caring for all life on earth. That was like the whole message. And a guy like Sean Hannity, who pretends to be a big believer in the Bible and a big believer in Jesus Christ, and he doesn't agree with this? You don't agree that people should be treated with dignity and respect and security? It's absolute nonsense. They make our arguments for us again. So, the overall picture in all of this, and I'm going to leave you with this clip here from Bernie Sanders when he was on Fox News at the end of the 2020 Democratic primary, because I think this is a perfect example of how they make our arguments for us with all of those different examples. And they do this on a regular basis. It's not just Sean Hannity. But remember when Bernie Sanders went on Fox News to do a town hall, and even with the audience that they put here on Fox News to do this live town hall, he was able to get all of them to openly agree and even clap for some of his more quote unquote radical communist policies as Sean Hannity would portray them. So I'm going to leave you with this clip right here with Bernie Sanders absolutely carrying this Fox News audience on all of his major flagship policies that Sean Hannity would think are unreasonably radical.
I reject the idea. I really do. That's one of the things that bothers me. I hear it every day. I hear it on the media. I hear it from my opponents. Bernie is an extremist. Bernie is too radical. Okay, let's deal with it. Is raising a starvation minimum wage of $7.25 an hour, which has not been raised in 10 years, to $15 an hour, a living wage, a radical idea? No. Is making public colleges and universities tuition free so that all of our people have the opportunity to get a higher education in a competitive global economy, is that a radical idea? No. Is doing what every other major country on earth does, guaranteeing health care to all as a right. I live 50 miles away from the Canadian border. This is not a communist society up there in Montreal. They guarantee health care to all. They spend 50% of what we spend. Is passing a Medicare for all single-payer system a radical idea? No! And last point, Donald Trump, I know he's on the network a whole lot. Donald, you're probably watching. How are you? All right, I know. Wanted to say hello to the president.
He's actually giving a news conference.
Oh, is he? Well, I'm sure he's watching Fox on the side there. He's kind of addicted to your station. Trump thinks that climate change is a hoax. And that's because he doesn't understand or respect science. I believe that climate change is an existential threat to this planet. I will listen to the scientists who tell us that we have got to move aggressively to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. And through a Green New Deal, by the way, we can create up to 20 million good-paying jobs. So my point is, I appreciate Allison raising the question. I just don't think any of those ideas are radical.